Today's sermon is actually part 2 of last week's sermon. So I want to continue with the theme of our fallen nature, but I want to do it in a more practical manner, and this by referring you to an interesting man whom we find in Jeremiah chapter 40. His name is Gedaliah. Briefly, this man becomes the governor in Israel after the Babylonians leave. Remember, the Babylonians left, taking countless Israelites into captivity. But this Gedaliah, by all accounts, is a good man. He encourages the poor to settle down and to work the land and to gather in the harvest. He draws the Jewish officers who are out in the open country, draws them back in, which is a good move because then they won't become a terrorist force. In other words, Gedaliah makes wise decisions in the interests of the people whom he has been appointed to lead. And he is an example of good leadership in that sense. But all is not well in paradise. There are people who want to kill this good man. There is an assassination plot afoot. So Johanan, the son of Kareah, and all the army officers still in the open country come to Gedaliah, and they tell him that the king of the Ammonites has sent a man named Ishmael to assassinate him. But Gedaliah does not believe them. And so Johanan says privately to Gedaliah, "Let me go and kill Ishmael. No one will know it. Why should he take your life and cause all the Jews who are gathered around you to be scattered and the remnant of Judah to perish?" But Gedaliah answers him and says, "Don't do such a thing. What you are saying about Ishmael is not true." And so here's the thing, Gedaliah simply refuses to believe it, and simply does nothing to take any precautions against the assassination. So eventually the hitmen arrive, and you can't believe it, Gedaliah invites them to dinner. They break bread together. And while they're eating, the hitman and the 10 men get up and kill Gedaliah with a sword. They also strike down all the Judeans who were there and the Chaldean soldiers who happened to be there. And it's really a bloody mess. And Gedaliah was warned, yet he did not listen. And so the Bible doesn't include accounts like these for no reason. The question is, why was he so stupid, if I may be so blunt? And why did he not listen to the counsel given to him? Now, I like what D.A. Carson says, his explanation. He says this, "But Gedaliah's great weakness was that he could not believe ill of people. Despite all the evil of the previous years, he still did not believe that evil happens, that evil people do evil things, that leadership must sometimes oppose evil. On so many fronts he was a good man, but he paid for his Pollyannish optimism with his life." You see, the point is, and this is Carson's point as well, there are great repercussions for you and for me if we fail to understand the complete fallen nature of human beings. Gedaliah failed to understand that human beings are fallen creatures and they are fallen to the core. Every area of our lives has been affected by the fall. As we did discuss last week, we have the propensity to swap out what is infinitely valuable for something of no value. That's the madness. We are able to love, for example, a computer game more than we love God. We are able to choose sexual intimacy with another above our spouse and our family. Did you know that infidelity is the number one reason for divorce, statistically? It's a madness. And none of us are exempt from this disordering from this fallenness. But we're not all equally fighting against it, that we can say to each other, but none of us are exempt from it. And if you think that people, even your loved ones, will always treat you right, if you have that kind of Pollyannish optimism, you are sorely mistaken, as Gedaliah was. And if you do not factor that into how you interact with people, you will fail to set good boundaries for people, as Gedaliah failed to do. And on the other hand, that'll be the one thing, you'll fail to set boundaries. On the other hand, you will have unreasonable expectations for people and fail to show grace when necessary. And you'll be disappointed because people will not meet your expectations. You see, there's a tension that we need to live in. So much about the Bible is living in tensions, and often people miss the tension. They take one side or the other side. They do not see that the Bible teaches that we have to live in the tension. There's tight ropes to be walked. Here's the tension. We need to set boundaries for each other. And with boundaries, I mean certain things are acceptable and certain are not. You need to mend your fences. You need to keep your fences in place. So we need to set boundaries for each other, and we also need to cut each other some slack. We need to help each other fight the madness of our corruption back to back, till death do us part and more. But we also need to forgive each other when we betray each other. We need to tell each other that God demands holy living, and in the same breath, we need to remind each other of the grace of God. We cannot let our guard down as Gedaliah did. We need to be realistic about the human condition. And in the same breath, we cannot lift that same guard above the grace of God for sinners. Hopefully you can see the tension. Our primary trust cannot be in each other, because we're not the same today as we were yesterday, and we fall. Our primary trust must be in God. Psalm 146 verse 3, do not trust in princes, in mortal man, in whom there is no salvation. Our trust must be in Christ, because Christ is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I close. In the days of old, well, not so many years ago, they made cars super rigid. If you were in an accident, the car would not be so damaged, but you would be, or those in the vehicle who were in the vehicle when the accident took place. In days of late, safety has improved. Cars crumple on accident. They take the major impact. So the car doesn't look so good anymore. The car takes the brunt, but you and I in the vehicle, we're safe. Spiritually speaking, we crash into each other on a regular basis, don't we? Especially we crash regularly and ironically into our loved ones. May God grant you to understand your broken nature and His holiness and His grace. May you set strong boundaries for others in love, but may you also graciously forgive every fault. May you be strict in what is right and also be gracious in cutting others slack. If you do that, it would be good spiritual crumple technology for this Christmas time together and for beyond. May it be so that when people bump into you, that you're safe and that they are safe, and that the grace of God will cover even our brokenness.